The poison was already in his veins when he realized the truth. Adrian Vale, the man who built an empire on fear and blood, was dying. Not from enemies across the table, but from the hands that shared his bed and his name. His fiancée smiled while serving dinner. His brother raised glasses in his honor, and a quiet housemaid he'd never truly seen was the only one who knew. Tonight, power means nothing. Loyalty is a lie, and survival depends on trusting the one person he spent years ignoring. Stay until the end. Like and comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. The crystal chandelier swayed slightly overhead, catching light like fractured diamonds. Adrian Vale sat at the head of the table, fingers drumming against polished mahogany, watching his world pretend to love him. 23 people filled the dining room, business partners, associates, the kind of people who smiled with their mouths but calculated with their eyes. Adrian knew every face, every tells, every weakness. He'd built his empire by reading rooms better than most people read books. But tonight, something felt wrong. Not wrong like a bad deal. Not wrong like a hidden weapon or a planned betrayal from across the table. Wrong in a way that lived under his skin, crawling through his veins like ice water. He reached for his wine glass. His hand trembled. Adrian Vale's hands never trembled. "Are you all right?" Victoria leaned close, her perfume expensive and cloying. His fiancée, beautiful in the way magazines celebrated. Sharp cheekbones, calculating eyes hidden behind practiced concern. "You look pale." "I'm fine." His voice came out rougher than intended. She placed her hand over his. Her skin felt cold. "You've been working too hard. Maybe you should rest." Across the table, Marcus, his younger brother, raised his glass. To Adrian, who never rests because he doesn't trust anyone else to do the work. Laughter rippled around the table. Polite. Measured. The kind of laughter that died quickly. Adrian didn't laugh. He watched Marcus's smile, searching for something he couldn't name. His brother looked healthy, strong, nothing like the kid Adrian had raised after their parents died. Marcus had filled out, grown into his features, learned to wear expensive suits like they were born on him. When had that happened? The thought slipped away as another wave of dizziness hit. Adrian gripped the table edge. "Sir?" The voice came from behind him. Quiet. Almost invisible. Adrian turned, vision blurring at the edges. A woman stood there, dark hair pulled back, plain black uniform, face he'd seen 1,000 times without really seeing. She held a water pitcher, but her eyes weren't on the glasses. They were on him. "You need to leave," she said. Her voice barely carried over the dinner conversation. "Now." "Excuse me?" The kitchen. She didn't repeat herself, didn't raise her voice. Just stood there with an expression that didn't match her station. Not fearful, not subservient, urgent. "Please." Victoria's hand tightened on his arm. "Nora, we're in the middle of dinner. If Mr. Vale needs something, he needs to leave." Nora's eyes never left Adrian's face. "Right now." The room had gone quiet. 23 faces turned toward them. Adrian felt their attention like physical weight. He should fire her, should have security remove her, should make an example that would remind everyone in this room, in this city, that Adrian Vale didn't take orders from housemaids. Instead, he stood. His legs nearly buckled. The room tilted, and suddenly Nora's hand was under his elbow, steadying him with surprising strength for someone so slight. "Adrian?" Victoria stood, her chair scraping back. "What's happening?" "I'm fine." But he wasn't. His heart hammered irregularly, his vision swam, and his mouth tasted like copper. "Just need air. I'll come with you." "No." The word came out harder than intended. "Stay. Entertain our guests." He let Nora guide him toward the kitchen, aware of every eye following them. Of Marcus's expression, concern that didn't quite reach his eyes. Of Victoria's hand, halfway extended, frozen in something that might have been genuine worry or might have been theater. The kitchen door swung shut behind them, cutting off the dining room's murmur. "Keep walking." Nora's grip remained firm on his arm, steering him past stainless steel counters and hanging copper pots. The kitchen staff, his kitchen staff, stepped aside without question, their faces carefully blank. "What the hell?" Adrian tried to pull away, but his coordination was shot. "What are you doing?" "Saving your life." She pushed open the service door that led to the back hallway. Though I'm starting to wonder why. I don't need... The wine was poisoned. She said it flatly, without drama. Has been for 3 weeks, small doses, slow acting. Tonight was supposed to be the final push. The words took too long to process. That's insane. Is it? She pulled him into a storage room, shutting the door. When's the last time you felt normal? Not tired, not foggy, actually clear-headed. Adrian opened his mouth, closed it, tried to remember. Weeks, maybe a month. He'd attributed it to stress, to age catching up with him at 43, to the weight of running an empire that stretched across 3 states. Who? The word came out raw. Nora didn't answer. She moved to a shelf, pushing aside industrial-sized cans of tomatoes until she revealed a gap in the wall. Old servants' passage, the kind builders included in houses like this a century ago. Can you walk? Answer me. He grabbed her wrist, surprised by how weak his grip was. Who? She looked at him then, really looked, and something in her expression made his chest tighten. Not pity, something worse. Understanding. Everyone you trust, she said quietly. Now move. The passage was narrow, dark, smelling of dust and old wood. Adrian's shoulder scraped the wall as Nora led him forward, one hand on his arm, moving with the confidence of someone who'd walked this route before. How long? His voice echoed strangely in the confined space. How long have you known? Does it matter? Yes. She was quiet for several steps. Then, since the beginning, since they started planning it. And you said nothing. I'm saying something now. They emerged into what looked like a forgotten room, furniture covered in sheets, windows painted black. Nora locked the door behind them, then moved to the window, peeling back black paint with practiced efficiency. Why? Adrian leaned against the wall, his legs shaking. Why help me? She didn't turn around. Because I know what it's like to be invisible until someone needs you dead. Before he could respond, voices erupted from somewhere in the house. Shouting, heavy footsteps, the sound of doors being thrown open. They know you're gone. Nora finished with the window, pushing it open. Cold air rushed in. They'll search the whole house. We have maybe 3 minutes. This is my house. Adrian's words slurred slightly. My people, your brother. She turned to face him, and there was no gentleness in her expression now. Marcus found the empty chair. He's the one organizing the search. Something in Adrian's chest cracked. Not surprise, that was the worst part. Not surprise, but recognition of something he'd refused to see. All those times Marcus had insisted on pouring the wine, on serving dinner personally, on making sure Adrian drank every glass. Family tradition, he'd called it, a way to honor their parents. Victoria? He had to ask, even though he already knew. She picked the poison, researched dosage, made sure the symptoms looked natural. Nora crossed to him, checking his pupils with a clinical detachment that seemed wrong coming from a housemaid. How are you feeling? Like I'm dying. You are, slowly, but if we move fast, there's a chance. She grabbed his arm again, pulling him toward the window. There's a ledge, 6 feet to the ground. Can you make it? Adrian looked at the window, then at the locked door. Voices were getting closer. His name, shouted in concern that sounded increasingly hollow now that he knew the truth. He thought about his office, his files, his empire built on intimidation and careful violence. Everything he'd created since his parents died, since he'd taken a teenage Marcus under his wing and built something that would protect them both. All of it designed to prevent exactly this kind of betrayal. All of it worthless. Why should I trust you? He met Nora's eyes. You're a stranger. You could be leading me into a worse trap. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. If I wanted you dead, I'd have let you finish the wine. Now jump, or stay and die like a king who never saw it coming. The footsteps were right outside now. The doorknob rattled. Adrian jumped. The landing jarred every bone in his body, sent his already spinning head into a full revolt. He collapsed on wet grass, tasting blood, vision fragmenting into pieces that didn't fit together. Nora landed beside him, silent and sure-footed. She hauled him up with strength that seemed impossible for her frame. Can you run? No? Try anyway. They moved through his grounds like thieves, staying to shadows that Adrian had never noticed before. past gardens he'd paid for but never walked through, under security cameras that should have caught them but somehow didn't, because Nora moved with intimate knowledge of every blind spot. "How long have you worked for me?" Adrian gasped out the question, his lungs burning. 2 years, 1 month, 15 days. "I don't remember hiring you." "You didn't. Victoria did, right after you proposed." She pulled him down as a flashlight beam swept overhead. "Needed someone quiet, invisible, someone who could watch you without being noticed. So you're one of them." "I was." She waited for the light to pass, then pulled him forward again. "But I have a problem with watching people die slowly. Occupational hazard." They reached the wall that bordered his property, 12 feet of brick and iron that had always made him feel secure, protected. Now it was just another cage. "There's a gap." Nora led him along the wall's base. "Construction crew left it 3 months ago. Marcus told them not to fix it yet." Of course he did. The gap was barely visible, hidden behind overgrown ivy. Nora went through first, then reached back to help him. Adrian's shoulders scraped brick, his vision went white with pain, and then they were on the other side. The street was empty, quiet. Adrian had lived in this neighborhood for 8 years, surrounded by walls and gates and people who knew better than to ask questions. Now it looked foreign, hostile. "Where?" He could barely form words. "Where are we going?" "Somewhere they won't look." Nora flagged down a cab. An actual yellow cab, not one of his cars with his drivers who reported his every movement. "Somewhere you don't exist." Adrian collapsed into the back seat. The driver glanced in the rearview mirror, taking in Adrian's expensive suit, his obvious illness, Nora's plain uniform. "Hospital?" the driver asked. "No." Nora gave an address Adrian didn't recognize. "And take the long way." As the cab pulled away, Adrian looked back at his mansion. Lights blazed in every window now. Figures moved behind glass. His people, his empire, his family, hunting him. "They'll find us." He closed his eyes, trying to stop the world from spinning. "I have resources, connections. They'll use all of it." "I know." Nora's voice was quiet. "That's why we're going somewhere you've never been. Somewhere the man you are doesn't exist." "And who am I then?" She looked at him, this woman he'd never noticed, who'd watched him for 2 years while poison built in his blood. "You're someone who needs to decide if you want to survive more than you want to be Adrian Vale." The cab turned a corner and his mansion disappeared. Adrian felt something in his chest. Not pain, but absence. Like a part of him was being left behind in that building with its perfect gardens and poisoned wine. "The Empire is gone." Nora said it without cruelty, just fact. "You're dead, Adrian. The only question is whether it's permanent." His phone buzzed in his pocket. Then again, and again, messages flooding in, calls he wouldn't answer, the entire machinery of his life grinding into motion, searching for him, and he couldn't touch any of it without giving away his location. "Turn it off," Nora said. "Battery out, now." Adrian pulled out his phone. The screen showed 37 missed calls. Victoria's name filled half of them. Marcus's name filled the rest. He powered it down, removed the battery, and handed both pieces to Nora. She rolled down the window and threw them into traffic. "Jesus." Adrian flinched. "That phone was a tracking device like everything else you own." She rolled the window back up. "Your watch, your shoes, probably your belt, all of it has to go." "You want me to strip in a cab?" "I want you to think about what's more important, your designer accessories or your life." The driver's eyes flicked to the rearview mirror again, clearly regretting this fare. Adrian removed his watch, custom Patek Philippe, worth more than most people's cars. Nora took it without ceremony and dropped it out the window. His belt, his shoes, his wedding ring. He stopped, staring at the gold band on his left hand. "That too," Nora said quietly. "It was my father's." "Then they'll expect you to keep it. Makes you sentimental, predictable." She held out her hand. "Everything that connects you to who you were has to go." Adrian twisted the ring off. It fought him, like his finger wanted to keep this last piece of proof that he'd once belonged somewhere, that he'd had family, history, a name that meant something. The ring landed in Nora's palm, and she threw it into the night without hesitation. They rode in silence after that. The cab driver took them through parts of the city Adrian recognized from reports but had never actually visited. Streets where his influence existed in theory, protection payments, business fronts, the invisible web of control he'd spent decades building. None of it could help him now. They stopped in front of a building that looked like it was 3 bad days from condemnation. Nora paid the driver with cash from her pocket. Her own money, Adrian realized. She'd been planning this. How long? He leaned against the cab door, needing the support. How long have you been ready to run? Since the day I understood what they were doing. She helped him out, her arm around his waist now, bearing more of his weight than he wanted to admit. I've been packed for 6 weeks. The building's entrance smelled like piss and defeat. Stairs creaked under their weight. Adrian's legs gave out on the second floor, and Nora half carried, half dragged him up the remaining 3 flights. This is where you live. He looked around the hallway, at doors with multiple locks, at water stains spreading across the ceiling. This whole time. Not everyone gets mansions. She unlocked a door, 4 different locks, Adrian counted, and pulled him inside. The apartment was small. 1 room, maybe 12 by 12, with a kitchenette in the corner and a bathroom visible through a half-open door. But it was clean, organized. Nothing like the chaos of the building outside. Nora deposited him on the bed, the only furniture besides a chair and a small table, and immediately started moving. She pulled supplies from under the sink. Medical supplies. Real ones, not the basic first aid kit you bought at a drugstore. You're not a housemaid. Adrian watched her work, his vision sliding in and out of focus. I was once. She filled a glass with water, handed him 2 pills. Take these. What are they? Something to slow the poison, buy you time. When he hesitated, she added, I spent 2 years planning this. If I wanted you dead, there were easier ways. He swallowed the pills. They scraped down his throat and his stomach immediately rebelled. He barely made it to the bathroom before he was vomiting, his body trying to reject everything, the poison, the pills, the truth. Nora knelt beside him, holding back his hair, not speaking, just present. When he finally stopped, she helped him back to bed and covered him with a blanket that smelled like laundry detergent and strange safety. Sleep, she said. Your body needs to fight this. They'll find us. Adrian's words slurred. Marcus knows people, has resources. He's hunting a king. Nora settled into the chair, pulling a gun from somewhere Adrian hadn't seen. Not a sick man in a shitty apartment. Sleep. Adrian wanted to argue, wanted to plan, to strategize, to do what he'd always done when threats emerged. But his body was shutting down, pulling him under despite his resistance. The last thing he saw before darkness took him was Nora, sitting in that chair with a gun in her lap, watching the door like she'd done this before, like she knew exactly how to disappear. Teat. When Adrian woke, he couldn't remember where he was. The ceiling was wrong, water-stained instead of coffered. The sheets were rough cotton instead of Egyptian silk. And there was noise, traffic, voices, life happening outside thin walls instead of being kept at a respectful distance by gates and guards. He tried to sit up. Pain exploded through his skull. Don't. Nora appeared beside the bed, pressing him back down. You've been out for 16 hours. Your body's still processing. 16. Memory crashed back. The dinner, the poison, the jump. They'll have mobilized everything. They have. She held up a tablet showing a news feed. See for yourself. The headline read, Crime Lord Adrian Vale missing after suspected heart attack. Below it, a photo of his mansion surrounded by ambulances and police cars. A spokesperson, someone Adrian had paid well for their discretion, stood at a microphone, expressing concern for Mr. Vale's health and asking for privacy during this difficult time. Victoria stood in the background, appropriately worried. Marcus beside her, a hand on her shoulder, supporting his brother's grieving fiancée. A heart attack. Adrian's laugh came out bitter. Creative. It explains the symptoms people saw at dinner. The weakness. The confusion. Nora scrolled through more articles. They're controlling the narrative. You had a medical emergency, wandered off in a confused state, Every hospital in the region has your photo. Every law enforcement agency. They're positioning themselves as concerned family, desperate to find you before something terrible happens. While actually desperate to make sure something terrible does happen. Exactly. She set the tablet aside. You're worth more dead than alive now. The will, the business arrangements, the territory, all of it transfers to Marcus if you die without changing anything. And Victoria's position to marry into the consolidated power. I never changed my will. The realization hit him like a physical blow. After I proposed, I meant to, but there was always something more urgent, some deal, some threat. He closed his eyes. I chose work over protecting myself from the people I was working for. Most people do. Nora moved to the kitchenette, returning with water and more pills. We trust the wrong people because trusting no one is exhausting. He took the pills without argument this time. How long? Until you can move properly? Another day? Maybe two? The poison's clearing, but you're weak, dehydrated, malnourished. No. How long until they find us? Nora was quiet for a moment, considering. If you stay Adrian Vale, hours, maybe a day. They have your patterns, your preferences, your entire psychological profile. They'll find you because you'll behave predictably. And if I don't stay Adrian Vale, then it depends on how well you can become someone else. She sat on the edge of the bed, studying him with that same clinical detachment. Can you stop being a crime lord? Stop thinking in terms of power and control? Stop assuming you're the most dangerous person in any room? I don't know. Honesty felt strange. I've been him for so long, I'm not sure where he ends and I begin. Then figure it out fast, because the man they're hunting owns mansions and drives luxury cars and commands respect through fear. That man is easy to find. She gestured at the apartment. But a nobody who lives in a shithole and keeps his head down? That man's invisible. Adrian looked around the small space, at the single window with its view of another building's brick wall, at the furniture that had seen better decades, at the life Nora had built in the spaces between serving his dinner and watching his slow murder. Why? The question came out rougher than intended. Why risk this? You don't know me. Don't owe me anything. Nora stood, moving to the window. You're right. I don't know you. I know the Adrian Vale who signs paychecks and hosts dinners and builds empires, but I don't know the person underneath. Then why save him? She turned, and for the first time her expression cracked, just slightly, just enough. Because I know what Victoria is, what Marcus is. I've seen them plan this, laugh about it, celebrate each small victory as you got sicker. Her hands clenched. And I know what it's like to be used by people who smile while they destroy you. So maybe I'm not saving you. Maybe I'm just making sure they don't win. Before Adrian could respond, footsteps echoed in the hallway. Heavy. Multiple people. Coming closer. Nora's hand went to her gun. Stay quiet. The footsteps stopped outside their door. Adrian's heart hammered, his weak body flooding with adrenaline it couldn't sustain. This was it. 16 hours of freedom, and it was over. A knock. Nora? A woman's voice, older. You in there? Nora relaxed slightly. Mrs. Chen. Got something for you. Another knock. Open up, girl. These groceries are heavy. Nora unlocked the door, all 4 locks, and opened it just enough to accept several bags from a woman who had to be in her 70s with steel gray hair and eyes that didn't miss much. Thank you. Nora started to close the door, but Mrs. Chen's foot stopped it. That him? The old woman nodded toward Adrian. The man everyone's looking for? Nora's grip tightened on the door. I don't... Save it! Mrs. Chen pushed past her into the apartment, bags still in hand. I've been living in this building for 42 years. I know what running looks like. And I watched the news. She set the bags on the counter, then turned to study Adrian. You look like shit. Thanks. Adrian tried to sit up, failed. Are you going to turn me in? For what? The reward? She snorted. I've lived my whole life watching men like you. Men who think power means safety, means control. Then something breaks, and you discover it was all glass. She started unpacking groceries. Besides, your brother came through here yesterday, him and his people, asking questions, showing your picture. Adrian's blood went cold. And? And I told them I'd never seen you. Mrs. Chen arranged soup cans with careful precision. Because I haven't. The man in that picture owns property and people. The man in this bed is just sick and scared. Different people entirely. She finished unpacking, then turned to Nora. He needs real food, broth, toast, nothing heavy until his stomach settles. And keep the curtains closed. Your landlord's an asshole, but he doesn't ask questions as long as rent's paid. Mrs. Chen, Nora started. Don't. The old woman raised a hand. Don't thank me. Don't explain. And don't make me regret this. She looked at Adrian again. Whatever you did to deserve this, that's between you and the universe. But nobody deserves to be hunted by family. She left, locking the door behind her with a finality that sounded like protection. Nora stood still for a long moment, then moved to the window, checking the street below. She could tell them, Adrian said. She won't. You can't know that. I've lived here 2 years. Mrs. Chen's husband was murdered by a business partner who wanted his restaurant. The partner was friends with the police, with judges, with people who mattered. She couldn't prove anything, couldn't get justice, couldn't even keep the restaurant. Nora let the curtain fall. So she came here, disappeared, started over. She knows what it costs to run from people with power. Adrian absorbed that. How many people in this building are running from something? All of them. Nora started making broth from Mrs. Chen's supplies. This whole neighborhood. It's where you go when you can't be who you were anymore. And you? He watched her work. Who are you running from? Her hand stilled on the pot. For a moment, Adrian thought she wouldn't answer. A man who thought owning my time meant owning me. She didn't turn around. Who didn't like being told no. Who had enough money and connections to make sure no one believed me when I reported what he did. Her shoulders tensed. So I ran, changed my name, learned to be invisible, took jobs where no one looked closely enough to recognize me. Victoria knew. Victoria knew what I was, not who I was. She needed someone quiet who wouldn't ask questions, someone who understood what it meant to serve powerful men. Nora's laugh was harsh. She thought that made me controllable, complicit. But watching you get poisoned every night reminded me too much of another kind of poison. Slower, quieter, just as deadly. She brought him broth in a chipped mug, helping him sit up enough to drink without choking. I'm sorry, Adrian said, for whatever happened to you. Don't. She pulled back. Don't apologize for things you didn't do. And don't pretend we're the same. You built an empire on violence. I'm just trying to survive one. Fair enough. He sipped the broth. It tasted like nothing and everything. But you're keeping me alive. That makes you complicit in whatever comes next. Maybe. She settled back in her chair. Or maybe I'm just betting on a different kind of ending. They sat in silence, Adrian drinking broth, Nora watching the door. Outside, sirens wailed. Life continued. The city moved on, indifferent to the small drama playing out in this forgotten apartment. Adrian's phone, or the pieces of it, was somewhere in traffic. His watch in a gutter. His ring lost to the night. Everything that marked him as Adrian Vale, scattered and gone. But he was alive. For now. That would have to be enough. The fever came that night. Adrian woke to find his sheets soaked through, his body alternating between ice and fire. Nora was there immediately, peeling away wet fabric, replacing it with dry towels that would be soaked again within the hour. This is normal, she said, but her voice carried an edge that contradicted the words. Your body's fighting back, trying to purge what's left. Feels like it's purging everything. His teeth chattered despite the heat rolling off his skin, including my insides. Probably is. She pressed a cool cloth to his forehead. The poison they used breaks down slowly. Leaves residue in your organs, liver, kidneys, heart. They're all working overtime to clean it out. How do you know so much about poison? She didn't answer right away, just kept changing the cloth, her movements mechanical. Practiced. Nora, I had to learn. Her voice went flat. After. Had to understand what was happening to me, what he'd been doing. Adrian wanted to ask more, but another wave of nausea hit. He barely made it to the bathroom, his body rejecting water he desperately needed. Nora held him through it, her hands steady on his shoulders, not offering empty comfort, just presence. When he finally collapsed back on the bed, she brought more pills. Different ones this time. What are these? Charcoal. Helps absorb toxins. She waited while he swallowed them. And something for the nausea. You need to keep fluids down, or this gets worse. Worse than dying in a shitty apartment? Worse than dying fast. She sat back in her chair, gun within reach. Always within reach. Kidney failure is slow, painful. I've seen it. Jesus. Adrian closed his eyes. You're really good at encouragement. I'm good at keeping people alive. Encouragement is extra. Despite everything, he almost laughed. Would have, if his body could spare the energy. The hours blurred after that. Day became night, became day. Again. Marked only by the changing light through the curtains Nora kept closed. She forced him to drink, to eat small bites of toast that tasted like cardboard, to take pills whose names he stopped asking about. Sometimes he slept. Sometimes he thought he was sleeping but was actually awake, staring at water stains on the ceiling that looked like maps of countries he'd never visit. Sometimes he talked, words spilling out in the fever's grip, and he wasn't sure if Nora heard or if he was just confessing to the dark. He told her about his parents, the car crash that wasn't really a crash, but a message from a rival who wanted their territory, about finding their bodies, about the way his mother's hand still clutched his father's, even in death. About Marcus, 16 and terrified, looking at Adrian like he could fix everything. Like being 23 made him old enough to be a father, a brother, a shield against the world that had just murdered their parents for the crime of not being vicious enough. I promised him. Adrian's voice cracked. Promised I'd protect him. Build something strong enough that no one could touch us. Make us untouchable. You can't make yourself untouchable. Nora's voice came from somewhere near the window. You can only make yourself alone. Is that what happened to you? Silence. Then, I tried to be strong enough that no one could hurt me again. Invisible enough that no one would notice me. It didn't work. You can't hide from yourself. Adrian wanted to ask what she meant, but sleep pulled him under before he could form the words. When he woke again, the fever had broken. His sheets were dry, his head clearer than it had been in weeks, months, maybe. He couldn't remember the last time his thoughts didn't feel wrapped in cotton. Nora sat in her chair, tablet in hand, scrolling through news feeds. How long? His voice came out rough. 3 days. She didn't look up. You've been in and out, mostly out. 3. He tried to sit up, succeeded this time. His body felt weak but functional, like something that might work again with effort. What's happened? Your memorial service is scheduled for tomorrow. She turned the tablet to show him. Private ceremony, family, and close associates only. They're claiming you wandered off during a medical emergency and your body was found in the river. Dental records confirm the identification. Adrian stared at his own obituary. The photo they'd chosen made him look distinguished, powerful, the kind of man whose death meant something. They found a body. They provided a body. Nora set the tablet aside. Homeless man, right age and build, been dead about a week before they discovered him. Convenient timing. Who identified, but he knew. Marcus. Claimed he could tell by the ring, your father's ring. She met his eyes. The one I threw away 3 days ago. Funny how it showed up on a corpse. He kept one. Adrian's mind started working again, putting pieces together. Must have had a copy made. Years ago, probably. Planning this. Or just insurance. Nora stood, stretching. Either way, you're officially dead. Estate transfers to Marcus as next of kin. Victoria gets a substantial payout as grieving fiancé. Everyone who matters thinks you drowned. Everyone except you and Mrs. Chen. And whoever else lives in this building and doesn't ask questions. She moved to the kitchenette, starting coffee. But we can't stay here forever. Eventually someone will look too close. Ask why I'm home all day. Why there's a man in my apartment. So what's the plan? She poured 2 cups, brought him one. The coffee was terrible, instant and bitter, but Adrian drank it like it was the best thing he'd ever tasted. You get stronger. We wait for the memorial to pass. Then we figure out what comes next. What comes next is I take back what's mine. The words came automatically, built from decades of refusing to lose. I expose them, prove I'm alive, reclaim with what proof? Nora cut him off. What evidence? Your body's been identified. Your death is official. You show up alive, they'll claim you faked everything, made them grieve, tried to steal from your own estate. But the poison was wine you drank in your own house, from bottles you chose. No one can prove they spiked it. She sat on the bed's edge, close enough that he could see the exhaustion in her face. They've had 3 days to clean up, dispose of evidence, perfect their story. You're the one who looks crazy now, the crime lord who staged his own death. Adrian wanted to argue, wanted to insist that truth mattered, that justice existed, that the empire he'd built meant something. But he'd built that empire on understanding how power worked. And power didn't care about truth. It cared about narrative, about who controlled the story. Right now, Marcus controlled everything. So I'm dead. He drank more coffee. And they win. They think they've won. Nora's expression shifted. There's a difference. What difference? Dead men have freedom. No one's watching them. No one expects them to follow rules. She leaned forward. You wanted to be untouchable. Well, now you are. Because you don't exist. Adrian studied her. This woman who'd been invisible in his house for 2 years, who'd watched and planned and waited for the right moment to act. You've thought about this. I've thought about nothing else for 6 weeks. She stood, pacing the small space. Since I realized what they were doing, since I understood you were dying and didn't even know it, why didn't you just tell me? Would you have believed me? She turned to face him. Your housemaid comes to you and says your fiancé and brother are poisoning you. What would you have done? Adrian opened his mouth, closed it. Because he knew the answer. He would have fired her, maybe worse. Would have assumed she was angling for money or revenge or attention. Would have protected the people he loved from the crazy accusations of a woman he barely noticed. Exactly. Nora read his expression. You had to see it yourself, had to feel it. Otherwise, you'd have chosen them over truth. I did choose them. The admission burned. Every day for months. Chose to ignore the signs because it was easier than believing the people closest to me wanted me dead. Most people do. She sat back down. We protect ourselves from truth until it's too late. I did the same thing. Told myself he was just intense, just passionate, just showing he cared. Her hands clenched. Until caring put me in the hospital. They sat in silence, two people who'd learned the same lesson from different teachers. Trust was a luxury that cost everything. A knock on the door shattered the quiet. Nora's hand went to her gun. Adrian tensed, his weak body flooding with useless adrenaline. Nora, Mrs. Chen's voice. I know you're awake. Open up. Nora unlocked the door. Mrs. Chen entered carrying more groceries, but her expression was different. Tight. What's wrong? Nora took the bags. Your brother was back. Mrs. Chen looked at Adrian. Him and 2 others going door to door, showing pictures, offering money for information. What kind of money? Adrian asked. 50,000 for anyone who's seen you. 200 if the tip leads to finding you. She set her purse on the table. That's serious money in this neighborhood. The kind that makes people remember things that didn't happen. Did anyone? Not yet. Mrs. Chen cut him off. But they will. Give it time. Money talks, especially to people who don't have any. Nora moved to the window, checking the street below. How long? Day? Maybe 2. Mrs. Chen pulled out her phone, showing them a photo. He left these flyers. Your face is all over the neighborhood now. The flyer showed Adrian's face alongside a story about a missing brother, presumed confused and in need of medical attention. A reward for safe return. Marcus's phone number at the bottom. Clever. Adrian studied the image. Makes him look concerned, makes me look vulnerable. Anyone who finds me will think they're helping. That's the point. Nora turned from the window. He's controlling how people see you, not as a threat, but as a victim who needs to be rescued. We need to move. Mrs. Chen's voice was firm. Tonight, before the money convinces someone to look closer. Where? Nora asked. Every hotel requires ID. Every rental needs references. I have a place. The old woman pulled out a key. My daughter's apartment. She's overseas, won't be back for 6 months. It's in Queens. Different neighborhood, different people. She set the key on the table. 2 bedrooms. Furnished. Paid through the year. Mrs. Chen, we can't. You can. You will. She looked between them. I told you I know what running looks like, but I also know what getting caught looks like. And you're about to see it firsthand if you stay here. Adrian found his voice. Why are you helping us? Because men like your brother think money buys loyalty, that fear creates respect, that power means safety. Mrs. Chen's expression hardened. They're wrong, and sometimes the universe needs reminding. She left the key and departed, footsteps fading down the hallway. Nora stared at the key. We can't trust this. Can't trust anything. Adrian forced himself to stand. His legs shook, but they held. But she's right. Staying here is suicide. They packed in silence. Nora had little. Some clothes, toiletries, the medical supplies that had kept Adrian alive. He had nothing except the borrowed sweatpants and t-shirt he wore. Everything else belonged to a dead man. They left after dark, moving through streets that felt both familiar and foreign. Adrian had driven through this neighborhood 100 times, never really seeing it. Now he noticed everything. The way people watched without watching, the places cameras didn't cover, the rhythm of a world that existed in the gaps of his empire. The subway was crowded, anonymous. No one looked at anyone else. Perfect camouflage. Adrian caught his reflection in the window. Unshaven, hollow-eyed, swimming in clothes that didn't fit. He looked nothing like the man in the flyers, nothing like the man in the obituary. Just another exhausted person trying to get somewhere that wasn't here. You're staring. Nora's voice was quiet. Don't recognize myself. Good. That's the point. They changed trains twice, doubling back once to make sure no one followed. Nora moved with practiced paranoia, checking reflections, noting faces, always aware of who was too close. You've done this before, Adrian said. Running? Yeah. She didn't elaborate. The apartment in Queens was exactly as Mrs. Chen described. 2 bedrooms, basic furniture, nothing remarkable. But it had working locks and windows that faced a courtyard instead of the street, small advantages that felt massive. Nora cleared the space methodically, checking every room, every closet, every potential entry point. Adrian watched her work, seen for the first time not a housemaid, but someone who'd survived things that left marks. All clear. She locked the door. 3 locks this time, less secure than her old place, but better than nothing. We should be safe here. For a while. How long is a while? However long it takes for Marcus to stop looking. She moved to the kitchen, inventorying what Mrs. Chen had stocked. Or until the money runs out. I have money. The words came automatically. No, Adrian Vale has money. You have whatever cash I managed to save on a housemaid's salary. She started making tea, which is about $3,000. Maybe 4 months if we're careful. 4 months. He sat at the small table. And then what? Then we figure out plan B. And plan A is? She brought 2 cups of tea sitting across from him. Survive, heal, learn to be someone other than a crime lord. I don't know how to be anyone else. Then learn. She sipped her tea. Because Adrian Vale is dead. And whoever you are now needs to decide if he wants to stay that way. They drank in silence. Outside, the city hummed. Police sirens. Distant music. The sound of other people's lives continuing without pause. Adrian thought about his empire. The territory. The businesses. The network of loyalty built on fear and profit. Marcus would be consolidating power now. Making calls. Reassuring associates. Proving he could fill the void his brother left. Would they accept him? Or would cracks appear? Marcus was smart, ruthless even, but he'd always operated in Adrian's shadow. Never had to make the hard calls alone. Never had to be the final word when violence was the only answer. You're planning something. Nora's voice cut through his thoughts. No. You have that look, the same one you'd get before dinner meetings, like you're 3 moves ahead. Old habits. He met her eyes. But you're right. I need to stop thinking like him. Do you want to? The question hung between them, heavy, loaded with implications neither voiced. Did he want to stop being Adrian Vale? The man who'd built an empire from his parents' ashes? Who'd protected Marcus through violence and calculation? Who'd made himself into something feared because being loved was too dangerous? I don't know. Honesty felt like weakness. It's all I've been for 20 years, since I was 23 and suddenly responsible for keeping us both alive. Maybe that's the problem. Nora set down her cup. You didn't choose it. It chose you. And you never questioned whether there was another option. There wasn't. Wasn't there? She leaned forward. You could have left. Taken Marcus somewhere else, started over. But you didn't. You stayed and fought and built an empire because some part of you wanted to prove something. Prove what? That you were stronger than whoever killed your parents. That you couldn't be touched. That love was worth protecting even if it meant becoming a monster. The words hit like physical blows. Adrian wanted to deny them, to insist she didn't understand, that she hadn't been there. But she was right. He'd chosen this. Not at first, maybe. But at some point, survival had become ambition. Protection had become conquest. And he'd stopped questioning whether the empire he built was saving Marcus or just feeding something broken in himself. He was 60. Adrian's voice came out rough. Scared, lost, I was all he had. And now he's trying to kill you. Nora didn't soften it. So maybe the Empire didn't protect either of you. Maybe it just postponed this conversation. What conversation? The one where you both admit that money and power don't fill the hole your parents left. They just make it bigger. Adrian stood, needing to move. The apartment was small, but he paced it like a cage. You think I don't know that? You think I wanted this? I was 23 years old. I didn't know how to be a father or a crime lord or anything except terrified. So you became something terrible instead. Nora watched him pace. Something that scared you less than being weak. Yes. The admission burned. Yes, I became something terrible. Because terrible survived. Because terrible kept us fed and safe and alive. Because his voice broke. Because I didn't know what else to be. The silence that followed felt different. Not empty, but full of things neither wanted to say. Nora finally spoke. When I ran from him, I thought I was running from violence, from pain, from what he'd made me. She stared at her tea. But I was really running from myself, from the person who'd stayed too long, who'd made excuses, who'd believed love could coexist with terror. Did you find her? That person? No, but I found someone else, someone quieter, someone who knew how to disappear. She looked up. Maybe that's what you need. Not to find who you were before, but to discover who you could be next. As a dead man, as a free one. Adrian stopped pacing, looked at this woman who'd saved him for reasons he still didn't fully understand, who'd risked everything to pull him out of his own tomb. Why? The question he'd asked before. Why do this? You could have left, let them kill me, started over somewhere else. I thought about it. She didn't lie. It would have been easier, safer, but she hesitated. I watched you at those dinners, watched how you talked to people, how you carried yourself. Like a king. Like someone drowning who'd forgotten how to ask for help. She met his eyes. I recognized it. That isolation. That certainty that showing weakness meant death. I lived that. And watching you die the same way felt like watching myself fail twice. So you're saving yourself through me? Maybe. Or maybe I'm just tired of powerful men thinking they're untouchable until someone proves them mortal. She smiled, but it was sad. Either way, you're alive. What you do with that is your choice. They finished their tea in comfortable silence. Adrian's body ached. His mind spun with possibilities and dead ends, but for the first time in longer than he could remember, he felt something other than numb. He felt afraid. Not the strategic fear that calculated odds and planned contingencies. Real fear. The kind that came from having nothing left to lose because he'd already lost everything. The kind that meant he might actually be alive. That night he dreamed of his parents, not the bodies in the car, but before. His mother laughing at something his father said. The way they'd held hands at dinner. The casual intimacy of people who trusted each other completely. He dreamed of Marcus at 16, skinny and scared, asking Adrian what they'd do now. and Adrian promising something he couldn't deliver, promising safety, promising family, promising that love could survive anything if you were strong enough. He woke to find Nora sitting by the window, watching the courtyard below. Gun on the table. Always the gun. Can't sleep? His voice was rough. Don't need much anymore. She didn't turn. You learn to sleep light when being found means dying. How long? He sat up. How long did you run before you felt safe? I'll let you know when it happens. Adrian joined her at the window. The courtyard was empty, lit by a single flickering lamp. Ordinary, forgettable, perfect. Tomorrow's the memorial, he said. I know. They'll bury an empty casket, give speeches. Marcus will cry. Victoria will wear black and look devastated. Probably. And I'll watch from a shitty apartment in Queens while my empire gets stolen. Yes. Nora finally looked at him. Does that bother you? Everything about this bothers me. He leaned against the wall. I'm supposed to be dead. My brother wants me dead. My fiancé helped poison me. And the only person who knows I'm alive is a woman I employed for 2 years without really seeing. Sounds about right. It's insane. It's life. She stood, stretching. Nothing ever goes like you plan. You can fight that or accept it. Which did you choose? Both. Neither. I'm still figuring it out. Wait. She moved toward her bedroom. Get some sleep. Tomorrow we watch your funeral. Day after we figure out what living looks like. She closed the door, leaving Adrian alone with the dark and his thoughts. He thought about the memorial, about Marcus standing over an empty casket, pretending to grieve, about Victoria in widow's black, already planning her next move, about the empire he'd built, now passing to people who'd murdered him to get it, and he thought about Nora's question, what living looked like. He'd spent 20 years defining himself by what he controlled, what he owned, what he could take and keep and defend, but none of that had protected him. None of that had seen the knife coming from inside his own house. Maybe she was right. Maybe Adrian Vale needed to stay dead. The question was who survived in his place. The memorial service streamed live at 2 p.m. Nora had set up the tablet on the kitchen table, positioned so they could both see without crowding. Adrian stared at the screen like it might offer answers to questions he hadn't figured out how to ask yet. The venue was perfect. Marcus had chosen well. The cathedral downtown, the one that hosted funerals for politicians and business leaders whose money had bought them respectability. High ceilings, stained glass, enough gravitas to make even a crime lord's death look dignified. Adrian watched people file in, faces he recognized, associates who'd made fortunes through his connections, politicians he'd funded, competitors who'd feared him enough to stay in their lanes. All of them wearing appropriate expressions of loss for a man they'd probably celebrated privately when news of his death broke. There, Nora pointed at the screen. Front row. Victoria sat beside Marcus, their hands clasped. She wore black that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent, her hair pulled back, minimal makeup emphasizing her grief. Marcus looked hollowed out like he'd aged 5 years in a week. The perfect picture of a younger brother destroyed by loss. He's good. Adrian's voice came out flat. I taught him too well. You taught him to lie? I taught him to survive. He couldn't look away from Marcus's face. Taught him that showing weakness gets you killed. That trust is luxury we couldn't afford. That family means protecting each other no matter the cost. Seems like he learned that last part differently than you intended. The service began. A pastor Adrian didn't recognize spoke about loss and legacy, about a man who'd built something meaningful, who'd protected those he loved. Generic words that could apply to anyone, carefully scrubbed of anything specific enough to be true. Then Marcus stood. He moved to the podium slowly, like each step hurt. When he spoke, his voice cracked on the first word. Adrian was more than my brother. Marcus gripped the podium's edges. He was my father, my protector, the man who raised me when our parents died, who taught me everything I know about loyalty, about family, about what it means to never abandon the people you love. Adrian's hands clenched. Nora's hand covered his, steady and warm. I keep thinking about the last conversation we had. Marcus wiped his eyes. The night before he disappeared, he seemed tired. I asked if he was okay. He said he was fine, just needed rest. I should have pushed. Should have known something was wrong. His voice broke completely. Should have protected him the way he always protected me. Jesus. Adrian stood, needing distance from the screen. He actually believes it. He's rewritten the whole thing in his head. Or he's a better actor than you thought. No. Adrian paced the small kitchen. I know him. Knew him. That's real grief. He's mourning someone, just not me. He's mourning the version of me he needed me to be. On screen, Marcus continued, talking about childhood memories that were half true, about promises Adrian had made and kept until he couldn't anymore, about a bond between brothers that death couldn't break. Victoria stood next, her eulogy shorter but equally polished. She spoke about love and future plans cut short, about the man she'd planned to marry, who died before they could build the life they'd dreamed of together. Her tears looked genuine, probably were genuine in their own way. She'd lost something too, just not what she was claiming. She's better than him. Nora's observation was clinical, more controlled. She's not trying to convince herself. She knows exactly what she's doing. She always did. Adrian returned to the table, unable to stop watching. That's why I proposed. She was clear-eyed about everything. No illusions about what I was or what our life would look like. I thought that meant honesty. It meant she saw you as an asset. Assets appreciate or depreciate. Yours was depreciating. The service continued. More speeches. More careful tributes that praised Adrian Vale while saying nothing about who he'd actually been. They sang hymns he'd never liked. The pastor offered prayers for a soul that had probably been past saving long before the poison started. Then they closed the casket. Adrian watched them seal an empty box. Watched Marcus place his hand on the polished wood, his shoulders shaking. Watched Victoria stand beside him, the perfect picture of support. Watched his entire world bury nothing while pretending it was everything. Turn it off. His voice was rough. Nora paused the stream. The silence felt heavier than the memorial's orchestrated grief. Adrian moved to the window, staring at the courtyard below. A kid was playing with a broken skateboard, trying to make it work despite a missing wheel. Failing. Trying again. The kind of small persistence that meant nothing and everything. What are you thinking? Nora joined him at the window. That I'm watching a stranger's funeral, that man they're burying, the one Marcus described. I don't know him. Maybe I was him once. Or maybe I just pretended long enough that everyone believed it. Who were you pretending for? Marcus. The people who worked for me. Myself. He watched the kid finally give up on the skateboard, kicking it in frustration. When our parents died, I promised Marcus I'd keep us safe. That promise became everything. Every decision, every calculated risk, every line I crossed, it was all about keeping that promise. And he's using that promise to justify killing you. Yeah, the word tasted bitter. Funny how that works. They stood in silence, watching life continue in the courtyard below. Normal people doing normal things, unaware that a dead man was watching them from a borrowed apartment. The gala's in 3 days. Nora's voice was quiet. Marcus announced it during the memorial. A celebration of your life and legacy. All proceeds going to a foundation in your name. Let me guess. He's running the foundation. With Victoria as co-chair. Nice. She pulled up the announcement on her tablet. It's brilliant, actually. Public grieving, charitable giving, consolidating power while looking devastated. He's covering all the angles. Adrian studied the announcement. The gala would be at the hotel downtown, the one that hosted events for people with enough money to pretend their wealth was earned honestly. Black tie. By invitation only. A who's who of everyone who mattered in his former world. He'll make deals there. Adrian's mind started working despite himself, falling into old patterns. Use the event to solidify alliances. Show everyone he can fill my shoes. Probably already has meetings scheduled with key people, including someone named Dmitry Volkov. Nora showed him another article. Russian investor. Been trying to break into your territory for years. You blocked him. Because he's a vulture who destroys everything he touches. Adrian felt anger rising, hot and familiar. He doesn't build. He strips assets and moves on. Marcus lets him in. Half our businesses will be shells within a year. That's not your problem anymore, isn't it? He turned to face her. Those businesses employ people, real people with families. Volkov doesn't care about that. He'll gut everything for profit. And you cared? The question stopped him. Did he care? Or did he just care about maintaining control? I don't know. Honesty felt like pulling teeth. I told myself I did, that I was protecting something, but maybe I just liked being necessary. Maybe both things can be true. Nora set the tablet down. You can be a crime lord who did terrible things and still care about the people caught in the machinery. Humans are complicated. We contain multitudes of contradictions. You sound like a philosophy professor. I sound like someone who's had a lot of time to think about how we justify ourselves. She met his eyes. I told myself I stayed with him because leaving was dangerous, because he'd find me, because I had nowhere to go. All of that was true. But I also stayed because some part of me believed I deserved it, that I'd done something to earn his attention and everything that came with it. I know it's not rational. I know it's not true. But trauma doesn't care about logic. It writes stories in our heads and we believe them because the alternative is scarier. Adrian absorbed that. What's scarier than believing you deserved abuse? Believing you didn't. That it was random, meaningless, that there's no reason, no lesson, no way to prevent it from happening again. She looked away. If it's your fault, you can fix yourself. If it's not, you're just prey waiting for the next predator. The kid in the courtyard had given up on the skateboard, sitting on the steps now, looking at his phone. Probably texting friends. Making plans. Living a life where the worst thing that happened today was a broken toy. I want to stop him, Adrian said it quietly. I know I shouldn't. No, I should stay dead and let it go. But I can't watch Marcus burn everything I built while pretending to honor it. Then don't watch. Nora's voice was practical. That's the point of being dead. You don't have to care anymore. Can you do that? Just stop caring about the life you had? She was quiet for a long moment. No, but I keep trying. The tablet pinged. Nora checked it, her expression shifting. What? Mrs. Chen says there's been more people asking questions. Different people this time. Not Marcus's crew. Who? She doesn't know, but they're offering different money. 20,000 for information. No questions asked about where it came from. Adrian felt ice in his stomach. Volkov, has to be. He's looking for leverage. Wants to know if I'm really dead or if there's something Marcus isn't telling him. Why would he doubt it? Because he's not an idiot. A crime lord disappears during a supposed medical emergency. Body shows up days later. Convenient timing for a power transfer? That raises questions for anyone paying attention. Nora pulled up her laptop, fingers flying over keys. If he's in the city, there will be traces, hotel reservations, restaurant bookings. Russians that wealthy don't hide well. You know how to do this? Adrian watched her work. Track people. I know how to find men who don't want to be found. Different skill, same tools. She pulled up several screens. There. Dmitry Volkov checked into the Carlisle 2 days ago. Suite on the top floor. 3 associates with him. Dinner reservations tonight at Marchand's. That's where I used to meet him, when he was trying to buy into my territory. Adrian felt pieces clicking together. He's retracing steps, seeing if the pattern holds, if Marcus operates the same way I did. Does he? No, Marcus is good at execution but bad at negotiation. He'll give Volkov too much to prove he's capable, and Volkov will take everything. Again, not your problem. I could make it my problem. The idea formed as he spoke. The gala. It's public. Cameras. Witnesses. If I showed up, you'd be killed before you made it through the door. Nor cut him off. Marcus has security. Volkov has security. Every dangerous person in the city will be in that room. You walk in, you're dead within minutes. Not if they don't recognize me. Your face is all over the news, all over social media. You just had a televised funeral. My face from before. Clean-shaven, healthy, well-dressed. Adrian touched his jaw, feeling a week's worth of beard growth. I don't look like that anymore. I look like someone who's been sick, homeless, forgotten. You look like Adrian Vale who's been sick. That's different. Is it? He turned to face her fully. If I keep growing this out, change my hair, wear clothes that don't fit right, Would you recognize me in a crowd? Nora studied him, her expression uncertain. Maybe, but I know you. I know how you move, how you hold yourself. Those things are harder to hide. So I change them, move differently, stand differently, become someone else. For what? To crash your own memorial gala and expose them? To stop a deal that destroys everything I built? He heard the conviction in his own voice, recognized it as dangerous. I know it's stupid, know I should stay dead, but I can't watch Marcus hand my empire to Volkov on a silver platter. This isn't about the empire. Nora's voice was sharp. This is about ego, about not accepting that you lost. Maybe, he didn't deny it. Or maybe it's about making sure that if I'm dead, I die for something real. Not because my brother wanted my crown and my fiancé wanted my money. Revenge won't make you feel better. No, but exposure might. He grabbed the tablet, pulling up the gala announcement again. Marcus is using my death to consolidate power. But what if people started questioning that death? What if evidence surfaced that made the whole story fall apart? What evidence? I don't know yet, but it's there. Has to be. They had to dispose of the poison, had to source the body, had to coordinate timing. Somewhere in all of that, there's a trail. Nora watched him, something shifting in her expression. You're serious about this. I'm serious about not letting them win. Whether that means exposing them or just making sure Volkov's deal falls through, I don't know. But I need to do something, anything, or I'll go insane in this apartment watching my life get dismantled. You could start a new life. I don't know how to do that yet, but I know how to be Adrian Vale. And right now, that's all I have. The silence stretched between them. Nora turned back to her laptop, pulling up more screens. Security layouts, guest lists, vendor contracts for the gala. If we're doing this, she said finally, we do it right. No improvisation, no trusting luck. We plan every step. We? You think I saved your life just to watch you throw it away at a party? She pulled up blueprints of the hotel. Besides, someone needs to keep you from getting killed by your own stupidity. Adrian felt something in his chest loosen. Why are you helping me with this? You said it yourself, it's stupid, dangerous. Because I spent 2 years watching you drink poison and pretending I didn't see it, watching Victoria and Marcus plan your death while serving them tea. Her hands clenched. I'm tired of watching. If we're going to do something stupid, at least we do it together. You don't owe me anything. I owe myself something, a chance to stop being the person who watches silently while bad things happen. She looked at him. You're not the only one who needs to prove they're still alive. They spent the rest of the afternoon planning. Nora pulled up everything she could find about the gala. Guest lists, security protocols, catering schedules. Adrian contributed what he knew about the venue, about the people who'd be there, about how events like this operated. The staff entrance is here. Nora highlighted a section of the blueprints. Caterers, musicians, everyone goes through this checkpoint. Basic security. They check IDs against a vendor list, but they're not looking that closely. Can we get on the vendor list? Maybe. Mrs. Chen's daughter used to work catering, might still have connections. She made a note. But getting in is the easy part. What happens after? I need to see the meeting, hear what Volkov and Marcus negotiate, record it if possible. And then what? Release it to the press? They'll say it's fake, doctored, meaningless. Not if I can prove I'm alive. Adrian's mind raced. If I can show up, alive and healthy, with proof they poisoned me, with recordings of their deal with Volkov, they'll kill you before you can say a word. This isn't a movie, Adrian. You don't get a dramatic reveal followed by justice. You get a bullet and a second funeral. Then what's the point? The point is disruption. Nora leaned back. You can't win, can't reclaim your empire, can't undo what they did. But you can make sure they don't win cleanly either. Make them scramble. Make them scared. Make them wonder what else you know and who else you've told. Chaos. Controlled chaos. The kind that makes Volkov nervous enough to back out of the deal, makes Marcus look unstable, creates enough doubt that people start asking questions. Adrian considered that. It wasn't victory, but it was something other than surrender. I need to look different. He touched his face again. Really different. And I need to move differently. I can help with that. Nora stood, moving to a closet. She pulled out a box, opened it to reveal makeup, hair dye, prosthetics. Learned some things over the years, necessary skills for staying invisible. You're full of surprises. I'm full of survival tactics. There's a difference. She set the box on the table. We have 3 days. That's enough time to change your appearance, get you moving differently, create a believable identity. Who do I become? Someone forgettable, middle-aged, working class, the kind of person wealthy people look through without seeing. She started pulling items from the box. We'll age you up, add weight with layered clothing, give you a limp maybe, something that changes your gait. And a name? Something common. John, Michael, David. She paused. What was your father's middle name? Thomas. Thomas Chen, Mrs. Chen's nephew from out of town, helping with catering because family helps family. She nodded, working it through. It's believable, boring, perfect. They worked late into the night. Nora applied makeup, testing different looks. Adrian practiced moving differently, changing his posture, his walk, the way he held his shoulders. Small changes that added up to someone unrecognizable. By midnight, a stranger stared back from the mirror. Older, worn down, invisible in the way that came from being ignored so long you stopped expecting to be seen. That's disturbing. Adrian studied his reflection. I look like my father near the end, before the accident that wasn't an accident. Nora removed the makeup carefully. Is that going to be a problem? I don't know. Maybe. He watched her work. You're good at this. I've had practice looking like someone else. She cleaned the makeup brushes with methodical precision. When I first ran, I changed everything. Hair color, style, the way I dressed. Became someone he wouldn't recognize if he passed me on the street. Did it work? For a while. Then I realized I couldn't recognize myself either. That's when I understood the real trap wasn't him finding me. It was me losing myself so completely I didn't know who to be when he wasn't looking. How do you come back from that? Slowly, by making small choices that feel like you. Reading books you want to read. Eating food you actually like. Sleeping when you're tired instead of when you think you should be. She set the brushes aside. It sounds stupid, trivial, but those small things add up to a person. What books do you like? The question seemed to surprise her. Mystery novels? The kind where ordinary people solve impossible crimes, where intelligence matters more than power. What food do you like? Thai, really spicy, the kind that makes your eyes water. A small smile. He hated spicy food, said it was unsophisticated, so I never ordered it. Now I eat it twice a week. Small rebellions. They're all we have sometimes. She stood, stretching. Get some sleep. Tomorrow we start real training. If you're going to be Thomas Chen, you need to become him completely. Adrian lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling, thinking about small rebellions, about the life he'd built and the life he'd lost, about the difference between who he was and who he'd pretended to be. Somewhere in the city, Marcus was probably sleeping soundly, believing he'd won, that the empire was his and the threat was buried. Somewhere else, Volkov was planning his acquisition, calculating profits, preparing to strip everything valuable and move on. And here, in a borrowed apartment in Queens, a dead man planned his resurrection. Not as a king, not as someone powerful, as someone invisible enough to walk into a room and tear down everything from the inside. The next morning, Nora woke him early. They started with physical training, how to walk with a limp that looked real, how to stand like someone who'd spent years in manual labor, how to make himself smaller, less imposing, forgettable. You lead with your shoulders, Nora corrected him for the 10th time. That's Adrian Vale. Thomas Chen leads with his head down, eyes on the ground, like he's apologizing for taking up space. This is harder than it looks. That's because you've spent 20 years training people to get out of your way. Now you need to be the person who gets out of everyone else's. They practiced for hours. Adrian's body ached from moving wrong, from holding positions that felt unnatural. But slowly the stranger in the mirror became more believable. Mrs. Chen stopped by that afternoon with the news. Her daughter could get them on the catering list. 2 positions, kitchen staff, They'd need to arrive early, stay late, keep their heads down. You sure about this? The old woman studied Adrian's practice disguise. Once you're in that room, there's no backing out, no calling for help. You're on your own. I know. Do you? She turned to Nora. And you? You're willing to risk everything for this? I'm already risking everything by keeping him alive. Nora's voice was steady. Might as well risk it for something that matters. Mrs. Chen nodded slowly. My daughter will meet you tomorrow. She'll go over procedures, what to expect, how to blend in. Listen to her. Kitchen staff who stand out get fired. Or worse. After she left, Adrian and Nora continued training. Voice work this time. Adrian's natural tone was too confident, too commanding. Thomas Chen needed to sound uncertain, apologetic, grateful for any attention. You're still trying to control the conversation. Nora stopped him mid-sentence. Thomas doesn't control anything. He responds, he defers, he agrees. That's exhausting. That's survival for most people. Welcome to how the other half lives. By evening, Adrian could slip in and out of Thomas Chen like an uncomfortable coat. It didn't feel natural, probably never would, but it was convincing enough that when he looked in the mirror, he had to remind himself who was underneath. They ordered Thai food that night. Really spicy, like Nora preferred. Adrian's eyes watered, his mouth burned, but he kept eating because it felt like a small rebellion against everything he'd been. Question. Nora spoke around a mouthful of pad Thai. If this works, if we disrupt the deal, expose some truth, survive the night, what then? I don't know. That's not a plan. No, but it's honest. He drank water, trying to cool the fire in his mouth. I've spent so long planning 3 moves ahead, I forgot how to just exist in the present. Learn fast. Because after the gala, the present is all you'll have. No going back to Adrian Vale. No reclaiming the empire. Just Thomas Chen or whoever you become next. Is that enough? I don't know. Is it? They finished eating in silence. Outside, the city lights flickered on. Millions of people living lives that didn't involve empires or poison or elaborate deceptions. Just existence. Simple and complicated and somehow enough. Adrian thought about his parents, about the promises he'd made standing over their graves, about Marcus at 16 looking to him for answers he didn't have, about Victoria's cold efficiency, about the taste of poisoned wine, about dying slowly in his own home while everyone smiled, about Nora, the stranger who'd saved him for her own complicated reasons, about who he'd been and who he might become, and whether the distance between those two people was survivable. 3 days until the gala. 3 days to perfect a disguise that went deeper than makeup. 3 days to become someone else completely, or die trying to stay himself. The morning of the gala arrived with rain. Not the gentle kind, but the aggressive assault that turned streets into rivers and made everything harder. Adrian took it as an omen, though he wasn't sure if it was good or bad. Mrs. Chen's daughter showed up at 7. Her name was Lisa, and she had the exhausted efficiency of someone who'd worked too many events to be impressed by any of them. You're the nephew. She looked Adrian up and down, her expression skeptical. You look old for a nephew. Rough life. Adrian kept his voice quiet, uncertain. Thomas Chen's voice. Yeah, well, keep that rough life to yourself tonight. You see something expensive, you don't touch it. You see someone famous, you don't stare. You do your job, take your pay, go home. Understand? Yes, ma'am. Lisa's expression softened slightly. Ma'am, when's the last time someone called me that? She turned to Nora. You, I remember. Good worker. Kept your head down. Still do. Nora was already in character, shoulders curved, eyes deferential. Tonight's different from regular catering. Lisa pulled out a folder, spreading papers on the table. This is high security. Guest list is pre-approved. Staff list is pre-approved. Anyone not on these lists doesn't get in. Period. She handed them badges. Adrian's had a photo Nora had taken yesterday, digitally aged and blurred just enough to pass without close inspection. The name read Thomas Chen, kitchen staff. You'll enter through the service entrance at 4. That gives us 2 hours before guests arrive. Kitchen needs prep work, table setup, all the basics. You take orders from Chef Bernard. He's French, he's an asshole, and he fires people for breathing wrong, so don't breathe wrong. Got it. Adrian studied the badge, trying to reconcile the face on it with the one he'd seen in mirrors for 43 years. Security checkpoint is straightforward. They'll scan your badge, check your ID, maybe pat you down if they're feeling thorough. You answer their questions, you don't volunteer information. Yes, sir. No, sir. Thank you, sir. Boring people get through fast. Interesting people get detained. Be boring. Nora repeated it like a mantra. We can do that. Lisa looked between them. My mother says you're good people in a bad situation. I don't know what that situation is, and I don't want to. But if you screw this up, if you bring heat down on this crew, I'll make sure you regret it. These people are my colleagues. Some are my friends. I won't let you hurt them. We won't. Adrian met her eyes. I promise. Don't promise. Just don't screw up. She collected her papers. Uniforms are standard black and white. You'll get them when you arrive. Keep them clean. Stay in the kitchen unless you're carrying something to the ballroom. And whatever you're planning, we're not planning anything. Nora's interruption was smooth. We just need work. Right. And I just won my third lottery. Lisa headed for the door. 4 o'clock. Service entrance. Don't be late. After she left, Adrian and Nora ran through the plan again. They'd been over it 50 times, but anxiety demanded repetition. We get in, we work, we blend. Nora ticked off points on her fingers. During the dinner service, there's a 30-minute window when most staff are focused on the main ballroom. That's when private meetings happen in the side rooms. Marcus will meet Volkov in the Constellation Room, 2nd floor, East Wing. Adrian had the hotel layout memorized. It's where I always held private negotiations. He'll use the same space because he's trying to prove he can fill my shoes. How do you get there without being seen? Service stairs, back hallway. Same route staff used to move between floors without interrupting guests. He traced the path on the blueprints they'd studied. I've used it before when I wanted to avoid people. And when you get there? I listen, record if possible, gather evidence of what they're planning. And if you're caught? Adrian didn't answer immediately. They both knew what happened if he was caught. Marcus would either kill him immediately or hand him over to Volkov as proof of good faith. Either way, he wouldn't walk out. Then I improvise. It wasn't much of a plan. Great. Love a good improvisation at a high-security event filled with armed criminals. Nora's sarcasm was sharp. What could go wrong? Everything, but we're doing it anyway. Yeah, we are. She checked her watch. We have 8 hours. Try to rest. Tonight's going to be long. Adrian lay down, but sleep was impossible. His mind kept running scenarios, calculating odds, preparing for variables he couldn't predict. Old habits from decades of staying 3 moves ahead. Except this time, he wasn't 3 moves ahead. He was barely keeping up with the current one. Around noon, Nora made sandwiches. They ate in silence, both lost in their own thoughts. Adrian wondered what she was thinking about. If she was scared, if she regretted helping him, if some part of her wanted to run. You could still leave, he said it quietly. Drop me at the hotel and disappear. This isn't your fight. We've been over this. I know, but I'm giving you one more out, because once we're in that building, there's no backing out. And if this goes wrong, they'll come after you too. Nora set down her sandwich. When I was hiding from him, I used to imagine scenarios where I fought back, where I was strong enough, smart enough, brave enough to make him pay for what he did. She looked at her hands. But I never did it. I just ran. And part of me has been running ever since. This isn't the same. It's exactly the same. You're going into a room full of people who want you dead, armed with nothing but a disguise and a plan that's mostly hope. That's either the bravest thing I've ever seen or the dumbest. Maybe both. She met his eyes. Either way, I'm not running this time. I'm seeing it through. Even if it kills us? Especially if it kills us. At least we'll die doing something instead of hiding from it. They finished eating. Adrian tried to rest again, managed maybe an hour of fitful half-sleep, filled with dreams of empty caskets and poisoned wine. When he woke, Nora was at the window, watching rain hammer the courtyard. What time is it? 3. We should start getting ready. The transformation took an hour. Nora applied makeup that aged Adrian 15 years, adding lines around his eyes, graying his beard, creating the weathered look of someone who'd worked hard for not enough money. She fitted a small prosthetic that changed the shape of his nose, just enough to break the familiar profile. He dressed in clothes 2 sizes too large, layered to add bulk around his middle, cheap shoes that were deliberately scuffed, a watch that didn't work, worn because throwing it away felt wasteful. Thomas Chen stared back from the mirror. Middle-aged, forgettable, the kind of person wealthy people ordered around without really seeing. How do I look? Like someone I'd ignore at a party. Nora's approval was clinical. That's exactly what we need. She'd transformed too. Her hair pulled back severely, minimal makeup, the same invisible qualities she'd perfected over 2 years in Adrian's house. They looked like staff, interchangeable, beneath notice. Perfect. They took the subway, standing in a crowded car with other people heading to work. Night shifts, service jobs, the invisible infrastructure that kept the city running while wealthy people enjoyed its fruits. Adrian had ridden in limos and town cars for so long he'd forgotten what this felt like. The press of bodies, the smell of wet clothes and tired humanity, the way everyone avoided eye contact, protecting small bubbles of privacy in public space. A woman standing next to him was reading a nursing textbook, highlighting passages with fierce concentration. A man across from them scrolled through photos of a kid's birthday party, smiling at something Adrian couldn't see. Normal people living normal lives, completely unaware that a dead crime lord was standing 3 feet away planning to crash his own memorial gala. The thought was so absurd Adrian almost laughed, caught himself. Thomas Chen wouldn't laugh randomly on the subway. Thomas Chen would stand quietly and wait for his stop. They got off at 42nd Street, walked the remaining blocks through rain that had downgraded to steady drizzle. The hotel loomed ahead, all glass and steel and expensive lighting that made it look like a palace. Adrian had been here hundreds of times, had owned a percentage of it, actually, through shell companies and complicated arrangements, had conducted business in its rooms, made deals in its bars, built pieces of his empire in its private spaces. Now he was entering through the service entrance like he'd never been here at all. Security was exactly as Lisa described. A bored guard scanned their badges, checked their IDs, waved them through with barely a glance. Adrian's heart hammered, certain something would flag, some detail would trigger recognition. But Thomas Chen passed inspection, was handed a uniform and directed to the locker room to change. The kitchen was chaos. Chef Bernard screamed in French at anyone within earshot, his face red with artistic fury over some perceived incompetence. Staff moved with practiced efficiency, prepping dishes for 200 guests, setting up service lines, organizing the carefully orchestrated dance of high-end catering. "You!" a sous chef pointed at Adrian. "Prep station 3. Start on the vegetables." Adrian moved to the station, picked up a knife, started cutting. His hands remembered the motions from somewhere. Cooking lessons his mother had insisted on when he was young, before everything fell apart, before he became someone who paid people to cook instead of doing it himself. Nora was stationed at the far end of the kitchen, working on dessert plating. They didn't look at each other, didn't acknowledge any connection, just 2 more bodies in the machinery of service. The work was mindless, repetitive. Adrian found strange comfort in it. No decisions to make, no power to wield, just carrots that needed cutting and instructions to follow. "Faster!" The sous chef appeared beside him. "We're behind schedule. You always this slow?" "Sorry, I'll speed up." "You better. Chef's already fired 2 people today." Adrian sped up, his hands moving mechanically. Around him, kitchen staff maintained a constant stream of conversation. Complaints about Chef Bernard, gossip about which guests were arriving, speculation about the tips they might earn from an event this expensive. Normal people doing normal work. And Adrian was one of them, at least for tonight. Time blurred. Prep became service. Plates went out to the ballroom, came back empty or barely touched. Expensive food that cost more than most people's weekly salary, consumed by guests who barely noticed it. Adrian kept his head down, did his job, listened. Bits of information filtered back through returning servers. Guest names. Table assignments, who was sitting with whom. Marcus had arrived with Victoria. They were holding court at the head table, receiving condolences, looking appropriately devastated. Several major players from Adrian's network were there. Some looked genuinely sad. Most looked calculating, already positioning themselves for the new power structure. Volkov had arrived with his associates, 4 of them, all radiating the specific threat of men who'd killed people and expected to kill more. They'd been seated at a prime table, close enough to the head table to signal importance, but not so close as to suggest equality. Not yet. Around 8:30, servers started clearing the main course. The dinner was winding down, which meant the private meetings would start soon. Marcus would want to close the Volkov deal away from public eyes, in a setting that felt intimate and secure. Adrian caught Nora's attention across the kitchen. She gave a tiny nod. Time. He wiped his hands, set down his knife, moved toward the bathroom. No one noticed. Kitchen staff came and went constantly, stepping out for breaks, for bathroom runs, for stolen moments of quiet. Instead of the bathroom, Adrian slipped through a service door into the back hallway. The noise of the kitchen faded behind him, replaced by the muffled sounds of the gala. Music. Laughter. The murmur of 200 people pretending tonight was about honoring the dead instead of consolidating power. The service stairs were where he remembered. He climbed quickly, his fake limp forgotten in urgency, then remembered and corrected. Thomas Chen moved carefully. Probably had bad knees from years of standing. Second floor. The back hallway was empty, dimly lit, decorated with the kind of bland art hotels used to fill space without making statements. Adrian moved down it, counting doors, matching the layout in his memory to present reality. Voices ahead. He slowed, pressed himself into a doorway. Two of Volkov's men walked past, speaking Russian. Adrian caught enough to understand they were securing the room, making sure the meeting space was clean. They checked the constellation room, nodded to each other, took positions flanking the door. Damn, he'd hoped to get in before they locked it down. Now he'd have to improvise. The service elevator dinged. Marcus stepped out, Victoria beside him. They moved with purpose, heading straight for the constellation room. The guards nodded respectfully, opened the door. 30 minutes, Marcus's voice carried down the hallway. That's all we need. He's waiting inside. One of the guards responded. The door closed. Adrian heard the lock engage. He was too late. They were already inside, already starting the meeting he'd come to hear, and he was stuck in a hallway with two armed guards between him and the only door. Think, Thomas Chen wouldn't be here. Thomas Chen would have a reason, a legitimate reason that wouldn't raise questions. Adrian spotted a room service cart abandoned near the elevator, probably from earlier in the day, not yet collected. He grabbed it, arranged used dishes like he was clearing them, and pushed the cart toward the constellation room. The guards watched him approach. One tensed. Kitchen sent me for the coffee service. Adrian kept his voice uncertain, apologetic. Said someone ordered it for this room? No one ordered anything. The first guard's hand moved toward his jacket. Oh, sorry, they must have meant a different room. Adrian started to turn the cart around. I'll just... Wait. The second guard pulled out his phone, checked something. There was a coffee order, different room, down the hall. Which one? Doesn't matter. You need to leave this floor. Now. Yes, sir. Sorry, sir. Adrian pushed the cart back toward the elevator, every instinct screaming at him to fight, to demand, to act like Adrian Vale. But Adrian Vale was dead, and Thomas Chen did what he was told. He rode the elevator back down, mind racing. The meeting was happening now. He needed to hear it, to record it, to gather something useful. But he couldn't get close enough. Unless he didn't need to be close. The idea formed quickly. Reckless, stupid, probably impossible. He found Nora near the dessert station, whispered quickly what he needed. Her eyes widened. You're insane. Probably. Can you do it? I don't know. Maybe. If I can find... She looked around the kitchen, calculating. Give me 10 minutes. She disappeared into the storage area. Adrian returned to his prep station, forcing his hands to stay busy while his mind screamed at the passing time. 9 minutes later, Nora reappeared. She pressed something small into his hand as she passed. A wireless earbud, the kind servers use to coordinate during big events. It's keyed to the hotel's system. Her voice was barely audible. Channel 7. The Constellation Room has speakers for presentations. I hacked into them. You won't hear everything, but you'll hear enough. How did you... I dated a sound engineer once. Picked up some things. She moved away before anyone could notice them talking. Don't make me regret this. Adrian slipped the earbud in, covered it with his hand like he was scratching his ear, clicked through channels until he found 7. Static. Then voices. Appreciate you coming on such short notice. Marcus's voice slightly distorted, but clear enough. I know my brother's death was unexpected. Death is rarely expected. Volkov's accent was thick, amused. Especially convenient death. What are you implying? I imply nothing. I observe. Adrian was sick, he disappeared, he died. Very sad. Very convenient for you. I love my brother. Marcus's voice carried an edge. I would never Of course not. I am sure you are devastated. Volkov's tone suggested he believed nothing of the sort. Now, let us discuss business. You wish to maintain your brother's territory. I wish to expand my investments. How do we make both things happen? Adrian's hands tightened around the knife he was holding. He forced himself to keep cutting, to look busy, while his world rearranged itself through an earbud. Adrian blocked you from certain ventures. Marcus was choosing words carefully. Shipping, primarily, and the waterfront operations. He called them strategic assets, said allowing Russian investment would compromise security. Volkov laughed. Strategic, as if crime has strategy beyond profit. I'm more pragmatic than my brother. I see value in partnerships. Partnerships. Volkov repeated the word like he was tasting it. Let me be clear about partnership, Marcus. I do not want small percentage. I do not want minority stake. I want control. Full operational control. You keep the title, keep the appearance, but decisions flow through me. Silence on the line. Adrian could imagine Marcus's expression, the calculation happening behind his eyes, whether to resist or capitulate. That's more than I anticipated offering, Marcus finally said. Then you anticipated wrong. Your brother built empire on fear and reputation. You have neither. Without Adrian's shadow, you are just young man with inherited assets and no credibility. Volkov's voice hardened. I offer credibility, structure, protection from others who will come for your territory. In exchange, I take controlling interest. This is generous offer. It's robbery. It is reality. You have 3 choices, Marcus. Accept my terms. Try to manage alone and watch your empire crumble within 6 months. Or find different partner who will offer worse terms because they smell your desperation. More silence. Adrian closed his eyes, listening to his brother sell everything he'd built, everything he'd protected, everything that had cost him his humanity to create. What percentage? Marcus's voice was resigned. 60-40, my favor. That's insane, 50-50 at most. 55-45, final offer. And you will sign documents tonight before I leave this room. No lawyers, no delays, we shake hands, we sign papers, we are partners. I need to review. You need to decide, now, before I lose interest and buy territory from someone hungrier. Adrian heard papers rustling, the scratch of a pen. Marcus signing away everything. Smart choice. Volkov sounded pleased. We will do great business together. Your brother would be proud. My brother would have never made this deal. Your brother is dead. You're not. Remember which is preferable. The meeting continued, details being hammered out. Transfer timelines, asset inventories, integration plans. Volkov wasn't buying into the empire. He was consuming it, leaving Marcus with a title and nothing else. Adrian pulled out the earbud, his hands shaking. He'd known this would happen. Had predicted Marcus would give too much. But hearing it, listening to his brother surrender everything without a fight, was different than anticipating it. You okay? The sous chef appeared beside him. You look sick. Just tired, long day. Take 5, get some air. You're no good to me if you pass out. Adrian nodded, moved toward the back exit. He needed to think, needed to process what he'd heard and figure out what to do with it. The recording. He needed the recording. He found Nora in the storage area, surrounded by dessert supplies. She looked up, read his expression. You heard? All of it. Did you? She held up a small recording device. Every word, digital file, multiple backups. The question is what we do with it. We expose them, send it to the press, to Adrian Vale's associates. Show them what Marcus is doing. Show them what? A private business meeting? Marcus selling shares of a company he inherited? That's not illegal. Might be stupid, but it's not criminal. He's selling my empire to Volkov. He's selling his empire to an investor. Unless you can prove he murdered you to get it, this recording means nothing legally. Adrian wanted to argue, to insist that truth mattered, but Nora was right. The recording was evidence of bad judgment, not crime. Without proof of the poisoning, without Adrian's testimony, it was just business. Then I testify. I show up alive, I tell everyone what they did. You prove nothing. Nora's voice was sharp. You're dead, Adrian. Officially, legally dead. Your body was identified. You were buried. If you show up now, they'll say you faked it, that you're trying to steal from your own estate, that you're mentally unstable. But the poison was wine you drank in your own house. No witnesses, no proof, just your word against theirs. She stepped closer. Think about this. Really think. You show up at that gala, what happens? Marcus sees you. He panics. His security tackles you. Or worse, Volkov sees you. He realizes Marcus lied about you being dead. Deal falls apart, and both of them want you silenced. Or the police get involved, and you're arrested for fraud while Marcus and Victoria play victims. So we do nothing? We just let them win. We let them think they've won, and we use this recording differently. How? Nora's expression shifted, calculated. Volkov made this deal because he thinks Marcus is weak, controllable. But what if someone made Volkov doubt that? What if information started leaking, not about the deal, but about Marcus, about mistakes he's making, about vulnerabilities in the territory? You want to sabotage Marcus to Volkov. I want to make Volkov nervous, make him question the investment, make him think Marcus can't deliver what he promised. She held up the recording device. We have voices. We have proof of the deal. We can edit this, send pieces to the right people, create doubt. That's not exposure, that's just chaos. Chaos is all you have left. You can't reclaim your empire, can't return from the dead, can't prove what they did, but you can make sure that when you stay dead, you take their victory with you. Adrian stared at her. This woman who'd been invisible in his house for 2 years, who he'd underestimated completely. You've been planning this. It wasn't a question. I've been planning a lot of things. Saving you was plan A. This is plan B. She pocketed the recording device. But it only works if you're willing to stay dead. Really dead. No coming back. No dramatic reveals. No revenge fantasies. Just Thomas Chen walking away while Adrian Vale's empire tears itself apart. And if I can't do that, then you die. For real this time. Because the second you step into that ballroom as yourself, you're finished. Her eyes were hard. Is revenge worth that? Is watching them lose worth losing everything you might have next? Before Adrian could answer, raised voices echoed from the ballroom. Something was happening, something loud enough to penetrate the kitchen's noise. They moved to the service entrance, staying hidden but close enough to see. The ballroom was in chaos, guests standing, voices raised, someone shouting. A server rushed past, pale-faced. It's crazy out there. Some woman just stood up and started accusing people, saying the death was murder, that she has proof. Adrian's blood went cold. What woman? I don't know. Security's trying to remove her, but she's fighting, screaming about poison and conspiracies, and he didn't wait to hear more. Adrian pushed through the service entrance into the ballroom, Thomas Chen's careful disguise forgotten. The scene was exactly as the server described. A woman stood on a chair, disheveled and wild-eyed, holding what looked like a bottle of wine. They killed him, she screamed at the crowd. Poisoned him slowly while everyone watched, and now they're celebrating while he's dead. Security moved toward her. Marcus stood frozen, his face white. Victoria was trying to usher guests toward the exits, maintaining composure even as everything fell apart. And the woman on the chair, still screaming, was someone Adrian had never seen before in his life. Adrian's first instinct was to move forward, to intervene, but Nora's hand clamped on his arm with surprising force. Don't! Her voice was barely a whisper. Look closer. He did. The woman wasn't just screaming randomly. She was performing. Her movements were too calculated, her positioning too perfect. She stood where cameras could capture everything, where the crowd had the best view, where maximum chaos would erupt. And in her hand, the wine bottle she waved around had a label Adrian recognized. The same vintage that had been served at his dinners. The same poison delivery system. This is the wine they used, the woman's voice carried across the ballroom. I worked in that house. I saw them. Saw her. She pointed directly at Victoria, pouring something into his glass every single night. Victoria's composure cracked. Just for a second, but Adrian saw it. The flash of genuine fear before the mask slammed back into place. This woman is clearly disturbed. Victoria's voice projected calm authority. Someone call the police. She needs help. I need truth, the woman screamed. Adrian Vale was murdered and you all know it. His brother wanted his empire. His fiancée wanted his money, and they killed him for it. Security finally reached her, pulling her down from the chair. She fought, still screaming, still accusing. The wine bottle shattered on the floor, dark liquid spreading across expensive marble like blood. Marcus moved to the microphone at the head table, his face ashen but his voice steady. Please, everyone, remain calm. This is obviously a disturbed individual making baseless accusations during a difficult time. My brother died of natural causes. His death was investigated. His body was identified. This woman is either mentally ill or seeking attention, and either way, she'll be removed. But the damage was done. Adrian watched the guests' faces, the doubt creeping in, the whispers starting. Once a seed like this was planted, it grew in the dark spaces where suspicion lived. Nora pulled him back into the service area as police arrived, as the woman was dragged away still screaming as the gala descended into controlled chaos. Who was that? Adrian's mind raced. I've never seen her before. Neither have I. Nora was already pulling up her phone, recording the scene through the doorway. But someone sent her. Someone who wants this deal to fall apart. Volkov? Maybe. Or one of your old associates who doesn't like Marcus selling to Russians. Or someone else entirely who saw an opportunity. She kept recording. Either way, she just did what we couldn't. Created doubt. Made everyone question the official story. Adrian watched Marcus trying to salvage the evening, watched Victoria moving through the crowd doing damage control, watched Volkov and his men conferring in the corner with expressions that suggested deal-making was over for tonight. We need to leave. Nora pocketed her phone. Before someone starts questioning staff, looking for other people who worked in your house. They moved quickly through the kitchen, abandoning their stations, grabbing their belongings from lockers. Other staff were doing the same. The gala was effectively over, and no one wanted to be around when police started taking statements. Lisa caught them at the service entrance. What the hell was that about? No idea. Nora's voice was steady. Some crazy person. That crazy person just cost me a major client. Chef Bernard is furious. Says we let unauthorized people into the event. Lisa's expression was tight. Did either of you see anything? Notice anyone suspicious? Just did our jobs. Adrian kept his voice flat, forgettable. Didn't see nothing. Lisa studied them for a long moment. My mother said you were in trouble, said helping you was the right thing. I'm starting to wonder if she was wrong. We didn't do anything. Nora met her eyes. We just needed work, that's all. Right. Well, you got it. And now it's over. Don't come back. Don't contact me again. Whatever you're running from, I don't want it touching my family. She walked away, leaving them in the rain that had started again. Adrian pulled his jacket tighter, feeling the weight of what had just happened settling over him. They caught a cab, rode in silence back to Queens. The recording of the gala was already spreading online. Someone had live-streamed the woman's accusations. By the time they reached the apartment, it had 500,000 views. Adrian watched it 3 times, trying to understand who she was, who'd sent her, what game was being played. But the video offered no answers. Just chaos. Just doubt. Just the careful demolition of Marcus's credibility at the exact moment he needed it most. Volkov will back out. Nora was watching a different video, this one showing Volkov's team leaving the hotel immediately after the disruption. He doesn't invest in uncertainty. Marcus just became very uncertain. So the deal's dead. For now, maybe forever. She set her phone down. Which means Marcus didn't get what he killed you for. Victoria didn't get the empire she planned to share. They're stuck with territory they can't properly control and a cloud of suspicion that won't lift. They still get away with murder. Do they? Nora pulled up more news coverage. Look at the comments. People are already speculating. Some think the woman was telling the truth. Others think she was hired by rivals. But everyone's questioning the official story now. Marcus and Victoria will spend the rest of their lives defending against whispers. Adrian watched the speculation spread in real time. Theories, accusations, some wild, some uncomfortably close to truth. The internet had taken the seed that woman planted and was growing it into a forest of doubt. Who was she? He asked again, because it was the question that wouldn't leave him alone. Does it matter? Nora met his eyes. She did what needed doing. Maybe that's enough. But it wasn't enough for Adrian. He spent the next 3 days digging, using skills he'd developed over decades of investigating enemies and allies alike. Nora helped, her own research capabilities proving surprisingly sophisticated. They found her on day 4. Her name was Sarah Mitchell. She'd worked briefly for a catering company that serviced Adrian's house. She'd been fired 6 months ago for being late repeatedly. Single mother, struggling with debt. No obvious connection to anyone in Adrian's world, until they found the bank deposit. $50,000 wired into her account the day before the gala. The source was buried under shell companies and international transfers, but Adrian had spent 20 years learning to follow money through labyrinths. It led back to one of his old associates, a man named Raymond Cole, who'd built his fortune on Adrian's distribution networks, and now stood to lose everything if Volkov took over. He hired her. Adrian stared at the evidence on the screen. Set up the whole performance, gave her the wine bottle, probably coached her on what to say, used her to blow up the deal. And she'll take the fall if anyone digs too deep. Nora's voice was grim. Probably already has a story ready about being a disturbed former employee obsessed with conspiracy theories. We should tell someone. The police, the press. And say what? That you, a dead man, investigated your own death and found evidence that someone manipulated a public event? They'll commit you. Adrian knew she was right, but something about Sarah Mitchell's desperate face, her scripted accusations, her willingness to destroy herself publicly for $50,000 sat wrong in his chest. She needs to disappear, he said it quietly, before Cole or someone else decides she's a liability. Why do you care? Because she's collateral damage. Same as you, same as me, same as everyone who gets used by people with power and then discarded when they're no longer useful. Nora was quiet for a moment. You want to warn her. I want to give her what Cole promised and didn't plan to deliver, the money to actually disappear. Start over. Somewhere safe. That's not your responsibility. Maybe not, but it's the only thing I can control right now. They found Sarah Mitchell in a motel in Newark, hiding from media attention that had made her face recognizable. She opened the door with a baseball bat in hand, her eyes wild with fear that Adrian recognized from his own mirror. I'm not here to hurt you. He kept his hands visible, his voice calm. Thomas Chen's voice, though he wasn't sure if he was still playing that role or if it had become part of him. I just want to help. Who are you? Someone who knows what Raymond Cole did, what he paid you, what he didn't tell you about the danger you're in now. She lowered the bat slightly. I don't know what you're talking about. Yes, you do, and you're right to be scared. Cole used you to sabotage a business deal. The people involved in that deal aren't the forgiving type. You need to disappear, really disappear, before they decide you know too much. The money won't be enough, and Cole won't protect you when they come asking questions. Adrian pulled out an envelope, set it on the table between them. This is $100,000, cash. Use it to go somewhere far, somewhere no one will look. Change your name, start over. Sarah stared at the envelope like it might explode. Why would you do this? Because I know what it's like to be used by powerful people, to have your life destroyed for their convenience. He stepped back toward the door. Take the money. Leave tonight. Don't tell anyone where you're going, not friends, not family, just disappear. Who are you? She asked again, but this time the question was different. Not suspicious, but genuinely curious. Someone who died and came back different. Adrian opened the door. Don't make the same mistakes I did. Don't try to be powerful. Just try to be free. They left her standing there, the envelope unopened on the table. Adrian didn't know if she'd take the advice. Didn't know if $100,000 and a warning were enough to save her. But it was something. A small rebellion against the machinery that ground people up and spit them out. Back at the apartment, Nora was packing. Not just overnight bags, but everything. The few possessions she'd accumulated over 2 years, the medical supplies, the files she'd kept on Adrian's poisoning. "Where are we going?" Adrian asked. "Separate ways." She didn't look at him. The gala was the end. Whatever came next, we always knew it meant going separate ways. Did we? He wasn't sure they'd ever actually discussed it. "I did." She folded clothes with mechanical precision. "You need to figure out who you are without the empire. I need to figure out who I am without being the person who saves people. We can't do those things together." "Why not?" She stopped packing, turned to face him. "Because I'll keep trying to fix you, and you'll keep trying to protect me, and neither of us will actually heal. We'll just trade one kind of brokenness for another." "You think we're broken?" "I think we survived things that break people. That's not the same as being whole." She sat on the bed, exhausted. "I've been running for 3 years. From him. From what he did. From who I became when I stayed too long. Helping you was supposed to be different. Supposed to be brave instead of scared. It was brave. It was reckless. And now it's done, and I need to figure out what comes next that doesn't involve hiding or running or saving someone else as a way to avoid saving myself." Adrian sat beside her, maintaining distance but presence. "Where will you go?" "I don't know yet. Somewhere quiet. Somewhere I can work with my hands. Maybe I'll go back to school. Learn something useful that doesn't involve poison or disguises or emergency medicine for dying crime lords." Despite everything, Adrian almost smiled. "What about the money? The recording?" "The recording stays buried unless we need it. Insurance if Marcus or Victoria come looking." She pulled out a flash drive, pressed it into his hand. "Your copy. Keep it safe. But hopefully you'll never need to use it." "And the money?" "We split it. What's left of my savings, what you gave Sarah, we're down to about 2,000 each. Not much, but enough to start somewhere." She met his eyes. "Unless you're planning to go back. Try to reclaim something." "No." He said it with more certainty than he'd felt about anything in weeks. "Adrian Vale is dead. Whatever I am now, it's not him." "Who are you then?" "I don't know yet." The honesty was terrifying and liberating in equal measure. "But I know what I don't want to be. Don't want to build empires. Don't want to control people through fear. Don't want to confuse power with protection." "That's a start." They sat in silence, two people who'd saved each other and couldn't quite figure out what that meant going forward. "Thank you," Adrian said it quietly, "for seeing me when I was invisible, for pulling me out when you didn't have to, for staying when running would have been smarter. Thank you for being worth saving." Nora's smile was sad. "Even when you didn't think you were." She left the next morning. No dramatic goodbye. Just a hug that lasted longer than necessary, and a promise to stay in touch that they both knew probably wouldn't survive the first 6 months. Adrian watched her cab disappear, then turned back to the empty apartment. His few possessions fit in a single bag. Everything else belonged to the life before, to the man who died in that mansion drinking poisoned wine. He thought about where to go, what to do, who to become when you'd spent 20 years being someone terrible and feared. His phone rang, a number he didn't recognize. He almost didn't answer, but curiosity won. "Hello? Adrian Vale?" A woman's voice, professional, unfamiliar. His blood went cold. "Who's asking?" "My name is Detective Sarah Chen. I'm investigating irregularities in your death certificate. We've received anonymous information suggesting the circumstances weren't as clear as initially reported." Adrian's mind raced. The woman at the gala, the spreading speculation. Someone had taken it seriously enough to actually investigate. "I don't know what you're talking about. This is Thomas Chen. You must have the wrong number." Interesting. Thomas Chen was also the name on the catering staff list for the Memorial Gala, same event where someone accused Marcus Vale of murder. Papers rustled on her end. "I don't believe in coincidences, Mr. Chen, or whatever your real name is." "I can't help you." Adrian moved toward the window, checking the street below. No police cars. Not yet. "Can't or won't?" The detective's voice was sharp but not unkind. "Look, I don't know what happened. Don't know if Adrian Vale is dead or alive or somewhere in between. But I know the official story has holes, big ones. And I know that when powerful people die conveniently, it's worth asking questions. Why are you calling me? Because someone wants me to find you. Left an anonymous tip with your number. Said you'd have answers. She paused. Do you? Adrian thought about the recording, about the evidence Nora had gathered, about everything they knew and couldn't prove. What happens if you find Adrian Vale alive? Then I investigate why someone faked his death. Who benefited? Who's responsible? Another pause. Or I find out he's really dead and close the case. Either way, I'm following where the evidence leads. And if the evidence leads to powerful people who won't appreciate the attention, then I do my job anyway. Some of us still think truth matters. Adrian believed her, heard it in her voice, the same stubborn integrity that had probably made her enemies in a department that valued cooperation over justice. I can't help you. He said it again, but this time added, but someone might be able to, someone who worked in the Vale house, who saw things, who might have documentation. Does this someone have a name? Sarah Mitchell, but you'll need to find her fast before someone else does. The woman from the gala, Detective Chen's voice sharpened. She disappeared. No one's seen her since that night. Then you're not looking hard enough, or you're looking in places someone wants you to look. Adrian took a breath. Try Newark, the motel district. A woman running on cash doesn't go far. Why are you helping me? Because someone should. Adrian hung up before she could ask more questions. He erased the call history, pulled the battery from the phone, threw both pieces in different dumpsters 3 blocks apart. Then he walked. No destination, just movement, putting distance between himself and everything that had been. The city felt different now. Not foreign anymore, but not home either. Just a place where 8 million people lived their lives without empires or poison or carefully constructed lies. Adrian bought coffee from a cart, sat on a bench in a small park, watched people pass. Suits heading to offices. Students with backpacks. Delivery drivers navigating impossible traffic. All of them with problems he'd never considered when he was busy building walls around his own. His phone rang again. Different phone, the burner Nora had given him for emergencies. Only one person had this number. You gave my name to a cop. Nora's voice was cold. I gave Sarah Mitchell's name. You were never mentioned. The recording was mentioned. Anonymous tip about evidence. Evidence I gathered. Which you can deny. You were just a housemaid who noticed things. If pressed, you got scared and disappeared. No crime in that. You should have asked me first. You were already gone, and someone needs to investigate this properly. Not for revenge, not for closure, but because what they did was wrong, and someone should say it out loud. Nora was quiet for a long moment. You're not going to let this go, are you? The empire's gone, your name's gone, but you still can't stop trying to control outcomes. I'm not trying to control anything. I'm just making sure the story doesn't end with them winning clean. He watched a kid chase pigeons, laughing when they scattered. Maybe that's the same thing. Maybe I'm still too broken to know the difference. Maybe we both are. Her voice softened slightly. The detective called me. Used some of your old connections to track down former staff. I told her I didn't know anything. Did she believe you? I don't know, but I gave her something anyway. Copy of the recording. Not the original. Can't be traced back to how we got it. Just anonymous evidence of a business deal that looks suspicious in context of a convenient death. Thank you. Don't. I didn't do it for you. Did it because she was right. Some of us still think truth matters. Nora paused. I'm leaving the city tonight. Going somewhere warm. Somewhere I can see the ocean and remember what peaceful feels like. Sounds good. It does, doesn't it? She laughed, but it sounded exhausted. Take care of yourself, Adrian. Thomas. Whoever you are now. Try not to die for real this time. Same to you. The line went dead. Adrian sat with the phone in his hand, watching the kid still chasing pigeons, and wondered what peaceful felt like for people who hadn't spent decades building empires on violence. 3 weeks later, the news broke. Detective Chen had found enough evidence to reopen the investigation into Adrian Vale's death. Inconsistencies in the timeline. Questions about the body identification. Bank records showing unusual transfers before his disappearance. Marcus and Victoria were brought in for questioning. No arrests? Not yet. But enough public attention that the whispers became shouts. Their lawyers gave statements about cooperation and grief and outrage at false accusations. But the damage was permanent. Volkov's deal evaporated. Other investors backed away. Partners started renegotiating terms. Marcus's carefully constructed authority crumbled under the weight of doubt. And without Adrian's reputation to borrow, he had nothing to replace it with. The empire didn't fall overnight, but it began the slow collapse that came when fear was exposed as unsupported by actual power. Adrian watched it happen from a small town in Montana. He'd taken a job at a hardware store, selling tools to people who fix things instead of breaking them. Used Thomas Chen's name because it fit better than trying to invent someone new. The owner, a man named Bill who'd lost a son to Afghanistan and a wife to cancer, had hired him without asking too many questions. Seemed to recognize the look of someone trying to start over. Gave him work that involved hands and patience but not much talking. Adrian rented a room above the store. Small, clean, windows that looked at mountains instead of other buildings. At night, he could see stars. More stars than he'd ever noticed when light pollution and ambition had blocked them out. He didn't make friends, didn't build connections, just worked, ate, slept, tried to figure out who he was when no one knew his name or feared it. Some days were harder than others. Days when muscle memory wanted to calculate angles and leverage. Days when he saw inefficiencies and wanted to optimize them. Days when the instinct to control outcomes was so strong he had to physically stop himself from interfering. Those days, he'd take long walks, miles into wilderness where the only thing to control was his own feet, where power meant nothing and survival was just putting one step in front of another. He thought about Marcus sometimes, about the brother he'd raised and lost, about whether there'd been a moment when things could have gone differently, a conversation that could have prevented poison, a truth that could have stopped betrayal. But mostly, he thought about the promises he'd made standing over his parents' graves, promises that had seemed so clear at 23. Protect Marcus. Build something strong. Never be weak enough to be hurt. He'd kept those promises, and they'd destroyed everything he'd tried to protect. Maybe that was the lesson, that protection built on fear wasn't protection at all, just postponed violence, just delayed truth, just a cage painted to look like safety. He got a postcard 3 months in. No return address. Just a beach scene and 2 words in Nora's handwriting. Still breathing. He pinned it to the wall above his bed, proof that someone else had survived, was surviving, would continue surviving somewhere beyond his reach or responsibility. 6 months in, Bill asked him to manage weekend shifts, said he trusted him, said he needed someone reliable while he visited his daughter in Seattle. Adrian almost said no, almost explained that trust was dangerous, that reliability was a trap, that giving him responsibility was how things went wrong. Instead, he said yes, because maybe that's what healing looked like. Accepting small trust without assuming it would lead to empire or betrayal. A year in, Detective Chen closed the investigation. Insufficient evidence to charge anyone with a crime. Marcus and Victoria remained free, their reputations damaged but legally intact. The empire they'd fought for continued its slow disintegration, but they'd face no jail time. No official consequences. Justice, such as it was, would come from living under suspicion, from knowing everyone doubted their story, from watching their power erode because fear without credibility was just noise. It wasn't the ending Adrian had wanted, but it was the ending he'd earned, and maybe that was enough. He was restocking shelves when the bell over the door chimed. He looked up out of habit, saw a woman in her 60s examining paint samples. Something about her posture, her careful movements, made him look twice. Mrs. Chen. She saw him at the same moment, her eyes widening slightly. For a long moment, they just stared at each other across 40 feet of hardware store. Then she picked up a paint sample, walked to the counter where he stood. I need advice on colors. Her voice was steady, unsurprised. For a room I'm repainting. What room? Adrian heard himself ask. Living room? It's been the same color for 40 years. Time for something different. She spread samples on the counter. They stood side by side, pretending to examine colors, while the real conversation happened in silence. Finally, Mrs. Chen spoke quietly. My daughter asked about you. The catering company called asking for references after that gala incident. She told them you'd moved, didn't know where. That's accurate. Is it working? Being somewhere else? Adrian thought about the question, about the year he'd spent selling hammers and learning to sleep without calculating 3 moves ahead, about the nights when anxiety still woke him, convinced danger was coming, about the mornings when it didn't. Some days, he pointed at a blue sample. This one. It's peaceful without being boring. Good choice. She collected her samples. My daughter's doing well. Found a new catering company. Better pay. Better clients. She doesn't ask questions about that night anymore. Good. And her nephew, the one who worked with her that night, you wouldn't know anything about where he ended up? I heard he left the city, found work somewhere quiet. Last I knew, he was still figuring things out. Mrs. Chen nodded slowly. That's good. Sometimes quiet is exactly what broken things need to heal. She moved toward the door, then turned back. The world's better with one less empire, Thomas. Even if the people who built it don't always face proper justice. Sometimes just watching them lose what they killed for is enough. She left before he could respond, the bell chiming her exit. Adrian finished his shift, closed the store, climbed stairs to his small room. The postcard from Nora was still pinned to the wall. He added nothing to it, sent nothing back. Their survival was separate now. Had to be. He made dinner, simple food, nothing that required skill or expense. Ate while watching the sun set over mountains that didn't care about empires or poison or the complicated ways people destroyed each other. His phone rang. The hardware store's number. He almost didn't answer, but Bill only called for emergencies. Thomas? It's Bill. Listen, I know this is short notice, but my daughter's having complications with her pregnancy. I need to stay in Seattle longer than planned. Maybe another month. Think you can handle the store? Adrian thought about it. About trust and responsibility and the weight of other people's faith. About all the ways it could go wrong. All the ways he could fail. Yeah, he said it simply. I can handle it. Thanks. I knew I could count on you. Bill hung up, leaving Adrian holding a phone and a responsibility he'd once have seen as leverage or liability. Now it was just a job. Just a store. Just a man who'd lost his hardware shop trying to help his pregnant daughter. Simple. Human. Nothing to do with empires. Adrian lay in bed that night, staring at stars through the window, thinking about the difference between power and trust. Power was something you took and defended and lost. Trust was something given freely that you could only try to deserve. He'd spent 20 years accumulating power, building it, weaponizing it, believing it kept him safe. And it had all meant nothing when the poison started. When the people closest to him decided he was worth more dead. When empires built on fear collapsed the moment fear was exposed as empty. But this small room, this quiet job, this town where no one knew his name or feared it. This was something different. Not safe exactly, but honest, real. Based on what he did each day instead of what he'd been. Maybe that's what freedom actually looked like. Not power. Not control, not the ability to make people afraid. Just the choice to be someone different, someone smaller, someone who sold hammers instead of wielding them. Somewhere in the city, Marcus was probably awake too, dealing with the slow collapse of everything he'd murdered for, fighting to maintain control that was slipping through his fingers, realizing that killing Adrian hadn't made him Adrian, had just made him a killer without the reputation to back it. Somewhere else, Victoria was calculating her next move, finding a new mark, someone else to build toward and betray. Because people like her didn't learn, they just adapted. And somewhere warm with ocean views, Nora was hopefully asleep, dreaming of things that didn't involve violence or poison or saving people who didn't want to be saved. 3 people who'd intersected in poison and chaos, now scattered across geography and choice. Adrian closed his eyes, listening to the quiet. No sirens, no voices plotting his death, no empire requiring constant vigilance, just silence, and the possibility that tomorrow might be different, not because he controlled it, but because he didn't try to. The sun would rise, he'd open the store, people would buy things, he'd help them find what they needed. Then he'd close up, make dinner, watch the mountains, and do it again. Small, repetitive, forgettable, not the life he'd planned. Not the ending he'd imagined standing over his parents' graves at 23, promising impossible things. But it was his, built on choices he made each day to be someone other than the man who died drinking poisoned wine. And maybe that was enough. Maybe survival wasn't about building empires or reclaiming power. Maybe it was just about waking up each day and choosing differently, choosing to be seen instead of feared, to trust instead of control, to live small instead of dying large. The empire was gone. The name was gone. The fear was gone. But Adrian Vale, or Thomas Chen, or whoever he was becoming in the space between those identities was still breathing, still walking, still trying, still learning that freedom wasn't found in power. It was found in letting power go.